In some stony fields, the fishermen used to deposit the bulky waste they fished up themselves, especially explosive ordnance that they didn't want to take ashore. But this time, Captain Mike Hilger is wrong. When they empty the catch on deck, they find countless unappetizing plastic bags. According to estimates, they take 20 years to degrade. Plastic bottles take 450 years. If that's true, then the Baltic fishermen would still be finding today's plastic waste in the 25th century. Most goes overboard from cargo vessels and passenger ships. Seamen talk about putting it on the blue shelf. But the catch placates the captain.
Good catch. Gunnar had 10 crates of cod.
They easily topped that today, despite the litter.
20, 21, maybe 22.
15, 20 years ago, it was almost impossible to fish in the Fehmarn belt because every coaster had a barrel for waste, and when that barrel was full, it was thrown overboard. That's not the case anymore. We get industrial waste, plastic foil, plastic bags, tins. I think the amount thrown away by sailors and tourists has increased. I don't know if the fishermen can clean that on their own. There aren't many of us. If the people on land don't pay attention, on the beach for example, then there's not much point.
Because of the lack of water exchange, the Baltic as an inland sea is particularly at risk. Mike, Gunnar, and the other fishermen from Fehmarn are dependent on it. It wouldn't occur to them to throw the litter back overboard because they'd only catch it again tomorrow. In the romantic evening light, Gunnar Gert Hansen finds 2 dirty beer bottles among the fish, empty. That doesn't do much for his mood. It wasn't a brilliant catch. Gunnar's had enough for today. He's looking forward to going home again. He doesn't mind if some people look down on him as a litter fisherman.
I'd be pleased if everyone got involved. You can imagine what's in that crate is from 4 days of fishing. If everyone got involved, we would have far more crates and the Baltic would be less polluted. That would be great. But I'm not the kind to worry if others choose to laugh at me. You just have to do your own thing, and I'm doing that.
Gunnar's father, Helmut, is waiting at the quay. A few minutes later, Mike Hilger's Andrea arrives in Burgstacken. The catch has to be unloaded and then taken to cold storage as quickly as possible. Gunnar is worried. If he can't achieve his quotas, he'll have a smaller quota for next year. He already knows that Mike did better. There's friendly rivalry between the fishermen. Plenty of fish in the sea, says Gunnar. Pity we didn't catch them. Maybe we're doing something wrong. Only 16 crates. But at least Gunnar's happy with the litter he's caught. It's 6:15. After 12 hours at sea, he drags the waste 100 meters to the skip. They owe this long journey to a pub landlord who didn't want the skip right by the quay. Gunnar doesn't care. He feels good about setting an example. Next morning, Gunnar drives across Fehmarn Sound Bridge to the mainland. He wants to get an update from a partner cooperative, the fishermen in nearby Heiligenhafen. They're participating in the Fishing for Litter scheme. He wants to know how they're getting on. This cooperative has far more members. They operate larger Euro trawlers that fish for weeks and are even at sea in stormy weather. He's curious, because on Fehmarn he often hears that the Baltic is clean.
We don't get car wrecks anymore, at least not in the quantity we used to. But as the evidence shows, the problem isn't solved yet.
There are 600,000 cubic meters of litter in the North Sea.
It's not very nice.
That's the official estimate. The figures are similar for the Baltic. 2 hours later, a heavily laden boat arrives in Borgstaken harbor. The fishermen on the Christiana have had an unusually good catch. 1.5 tons of cod worth 4,000 euros. All this fisherman will reveal is that they caught huge amounts of cod. But he won't say where. They're in a hurry to unload their catch. They quickly disposed of the litter at the pier, as always. And like the other fishermen who aren't supporting the environmental project. It's almost Easter. Mike Hilger is tired but very happy with the season. His son has finally returned as a fledgling captain. Mark Hilger is to take over the Andrea one day. He thinks it's good that his father's fishing for litter. What would he do differently?
I wouldn't do much differently at all.
Mark admires his father. He's just letting the gulls clean the herring net for him. The use of the flying cleaners is traditional on Fehmarn. The cod season is over for Gunnar Gert Hansen, too. He's taking a day off. His daughter Annika is on holiday, so she's accompanying him to Stralsund, further up the coast. The fisherman is meeting marine scientists at the Oceanium Marine Museum. He wants to show them the litter and something unusual that he was given by, of all people, his skeptical colleague Frederik.
Ja, ein Geschenk ist es nicht.
It's not a gift. It's the stomach of a cod. We caught it last winter, and Frederik was gutting it. He saw something red and shiny, and I wanted to show it to the scientist here. Let's see what he makes of it.
I was sitting comfortably on the sofa, and then he arrived here with a stomach, Annika says. Nevertheless, she went along to the lab. Marine biologist Harald Benke runs the Oceanium. He's just dissecting a male porpoise in his prime that was found dead on the beach.
Okay.
The scientists want to find out what it died of.
An der Seite lateral haben wir 0,9 Zentimeter Speckdicke.
First, they measure its layer of fat. The animal wasn't well nourished. Dr. Benke has a suspicion.
Wir werden uns dann nachher auch
We're going to take a look at the esophagus, because we've had animals that have had plastic bags wrapped around the larynx. That blocked their esophagus. They weren't able to take in any more food and died a painful death from starvation.
Dr. Benke has found toxic chemicals from plastics in the animals. Scientists have recently discovered that the smallest plastic particles in the sea attract other toxins in the sea like a magnet, spreading them further.
The larynx goes straight through the esophagus. That's why we always make sure whether the way into the stomach is open. Here it's open.
It turns out the porpoise died of parasites.
I'd like to know what you can say about that.
It's a very good project to get the litter out of the sea, because that's the only way it'll come out. Otherwise, it'll stay there for centuries and millennia. It'll break down, but the problem is these tiny particles are absorbed by mollusks, for example, and they're eaten by other animals, by predators, and that's how this plastic waste builds up.
There are 180 known species of small marine animals that take in plastic. Some are eaten by humans.
These large plastic pieces can be problematic for marine animals. We once had a young seal who had swum into a plastic ring, which then got stuck around its neck. The seal grew, but the ring didn't, so this ring ultimately suffocated him. That was terrible.
Gunnar Gerd Hansen surprises the scientists in Stralsund with his cod stomach.
What does the vet have to say to this? It's a cod's stomach. What are we looking at?
Das sind die Pylorus-Anhänge.
They've never seen anything like it before.
Das ist ein Stück vom Darm.
The cod evidently swallowed the plastic cap of a firework.
Das ist im Magen.
The scientists feel that the broken down plastic particles that the fish eat in mistake for plankton are much more worrying.
Ich bin mir ziemlich sicher, dass da dahinter ist nicht.
Wird dann den Magen wahrscheinlich verschließen, ne?
Ja.
Before Easter, Gunnar Gerd Hansen transforms his fishing boat into an excursion vessel. For 6 months of the year, the fisherman takes tourists out onto the Baltic. Before the start, he hears of the first press reports about their project.
Fishing for litter, Hamburg. We've already fished out more than 700 kilograms in Heiligenhafen and Borgstacken. That's a good story. I think a start has been made. I'm happy with that.
Most of the waste came from commercial and leisure ships, but also from the fishermen themselves. But Gunnar Gerd Hansen is hopeful. The colleagues on the island of Rügen have recently joined the project Fishing for Litter, for Baltic beaches without plastic, for healthy fish on the North German coast.
Fishing for
litter is something we're doing here as fishermen. We're trying to get the litter out of the sea. It's a big environmental problem. People spent decades ignoring it. But because the plastic is breaking down more than initially believed, it's become so small that fish and tiny animals eat it, so that it becomes part of the food chain. That's why it's so important to fish the litter out of the sea.